So we're anticipating about 50,000 people today?
What?
I think so.
Is that right? Or three? I can't remember which one, either 3 or 50,000. It's one of those numbers.
350,000. Yes, I think that's right.
Yeah.
Okay, and we are
Buy stock in YouTube now.
Okay, let's get started then. Hi guys, I'm Carmen and I will be your moderator today. To start off, why don't you guys introduce yourselves? So what is your career and what is it all about and who are you basically?
Why don't you pick someone to start, Carmen?
All right, why don't you start, Travis?
Hey there, guys. Hey, so my name is Travis Schuh. I guess we'll start with introducing, I guess, what my career is. So I'm a mechanical engineer by training, and I've been working in medical robotics since graduating from college. And I'd say my career probably summarizes to it's about solving hard problems and figuring out how to improve how surgery is done, and through that really working to improve patient lives. So it's kind of a broad thing, and it's sort of evolved over the years of what I've done. I started out at working at Oris Health coming out of college, and was one of the first 10 employees there. It was, really definitely a startup phase there, and really stuck with that same company through lots of growth and through an acquisition. And currently I'm director of mechanical engineering, one of the directors within the robotics and digital solutions group of Johnson & Johnson. So that's where we kind of landed up. So, I'd say that a lot of, my career has had a lot of, kind of progressions through it. But the core, the core tools that I've used have sort of changed as I go through, and so as my career has evolved. But the same, the same theme still applies if I'm, been working to solve problems to help patients.
Wow, that's really interesting. So what really led you to choose your career and how did you kind of build up to where you are?
Yeah, so I first thought about surgical robotics as being something interesting when Intuitive Surgical is one of our sponsors. Back I was doing high school robotics. They invited everyone, the team out to tour their facility and drive the robots. So definitely saw that was interesting, and was something I was interested in working in, but didn't I guess I kind of mostly ended up in the career I did by being in the right place at the right time and a little bit of luck. So I'll take advantage of that. I forget what was your second part of your question there.
No, I think you answered it pretty well. So did you say you were interested, like you were first introduced to this field in high school or in college? Yeah,
no, in high school. Yeah, definitely. As part of the, as a student on Team 971. Oh, I didn't introduce my robotics side. Yeah. So I was a student on Team 971, and then, have come back after graduating from college as a mentor and have been with the team, basically with the team ever since. Still mentored. So learned about it through my exposure from the robotics team.
That's so cool, and it's nice to hear that you're an alumni. Okay, and moving on to the next question, what do you enjoy the most about your career, and is there anything you don't like?
I mean, the thing that makes it the most fun is working on hard problems with smart, bright people that are fun to work with. So I mean, it's really the people and the problem. And I think that we've got a great team, and it's kind of just like robotics. If you have a great team, it makes the work really enjoyable, and it just so helps that all of the stuff that we're doing is they're really interesting problems, and we have a lot of fun, fancy tools to go that we can go spend money and buy things and make things, and it's just like a lot of fun. I don't know anything. It's hard to say if there's anything I don't like. I think that everything has. I mean, it's some days it is work, but by and large, it's just a fun it's a fun thing to do. So.
Okay, cool. Now, why don't we move on to the next person? Austin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. So like Travis, I started out doing robotics. I did robotics in, I think, elementary school through First Lego League, and then ended up on the high school robotics team, 971. And I really haven't left since then. So I went through the program as a student, and then through college came back and mentored. And then since I've been in industry, I haven't really left either. So I've been helping mentor the team from there. So I kind of took the robotics and made a career out of it at some level. So my official career title is a principal software architect. So I help take, I like to work on robotic systems, things that move. It's way more fun when your software moves something than when it sits there in a server. No offense to server folks, but so I'm currently working at Blue River Technology, which is trying to automate sprayers, trying to just spray herbicides on the weeds that you're supposed to kill. And so that's very much trying to design the software so that we can support that and kind of interact with the mechanical systems and lead the team to help make that all work.
Are the sprayers mainly for like farms and all?
Yep.
Oh, wow. Cool.
I've been through, I started out as
Iowa?
Google, and then I ended up at a semi-autonomous trucking company doing software there.
Oh, yeah.
And then now I'm at Blue River doing agricultural software. So it's all, the common thread there is things that move in robotics, which is very much a tie into the robotics that I did in high school and before and really enjoyed.
Cool. Kurt, would you introduce yourself and your occupation?
Yeah, so Kurt Schumacher, and I'll do a little bit more background because I have a different background. So I grew up in the East Coast, New York. I actually went to United States Military Academy, so I was in the military. And when I went to college, my dad's a carpenter, so I worked side jobs with him and learned how to do carpentry. And I told him, I'm going to be a carpenter. He's like, no, you want to be an engineer. And I'm like, well, what's that? He said, it's a carpenter with math. That's what he told me. I had no idea what that meant. So I went into college and got a civil engineering degree. And then when I got out, I served about 6 years and I was getting out of the military. I was trying to figure out what I want to do. And I could go two routes. I could go get my PE and be a civil engineer and build buildings. When I was deployed to Bosnia for a year, I had a lot of time and I read a lot of books and I was reading all these business books. And I was getting pretty jazzed about the business world, corporate America and all that, a little naive, but I was reading all these books and I was like, you know what? I don't want to do the civil engineering route. And so what I did is I just reached out to people at alumni. And you're going to hear that term alumni, right? That's how you get jobs, friends. And so I just reached out to all classmates, or not classmates, that went to West Point. And I just faxed them at the time. There's fax machines. I said, hey, can I take out to lunch? And I just started picking their brains. And I got a friend who got me hooked up with a job at Lam Research as a quality engineer. And so, and the only reason I got quality is because when I was in Honduras, I was a quality inspector and I had on my resume. And pretty much I got into corporate. I knew nothing. I just knew leadership. I knew project management. And so I just kind of created a niche where I became a really good expert at systems, business systems, data systems, business processes. And so that's kind of led me now. I'm 22 years at the same company, which is super rare, and the same boss for 20 of those years, which is super rare. And so I'm the guy that brings order to chaos. I call it herding cats. Operations, you'll hear that term. And so that's kind of what I do at Lam. I work in the supply chain side, but I'm involved in either data systems, business processes, project management, program management. Those are all terms that are kind of thrown at you, but not the technical side. I deal with a lot of technical people. And so what my job is to set up systems and processes so that the technical people can do their job fixing all these crazy, complicated problems. So that's kind of how I got to where I am.
That's cool. Okay, and Fred, will you introduce yourself and what you do?
Sure. Before I start, I'll just like to say that as an engineer, Kurt Schumacher's job is really important. we need those people desperately to actually do anything useful. So thank you, Kurt, for everything that you do. My name is Fred Worley. I'm a mentor for 2813. And I was introduced to FIRST by my fellow panelists here, Austin and Travis Schuh, back when they were still participating in First Lego League and Bot Ball. And my son, Sean, whom many of you know, now a graduate from Prospect High School, spent his 6th birthday at Mountain View High with Austin and Travis. I think that was the year that they did the huge exercise balls, the robot that could throw the huge exercise balls. And he walked out of that room completely addicted to robots.
Sorry.
And that was the start of that. And that led me to coach FLL for 5 years. And now this is my 5th year with FRC, and our first year this year with FTC. And so all of that time was inspired by, and all of my time as a mentor has been coached by my tremendous support from the Schuh family, Austin, Travis, and their parents, who have been mentors to me in mentoring first. It's absolutely fabulous program and family. So my career, my job, my official title, I work for a company called NVIDIA, and they make processor chips for graphics processing units. And over the last 10 years or so, they've started doing a lot of other things. And my title is Principal Engineer Cloud. Cloud is one of those terms that can mean a lot of different things, but my job sits at the intersection of a number of subfields of computer science that support this type of computing that we call cloud. And there's a lot of different definitions for that, but one simple definition is it's a computing service that provides access to computing resources, hardware and software, that you can access from anywhere, don't have to manage, and can do a lot of work. And so to make that happen, we need to build computer systems that are really big, really, really big. There's the group that I'm in built a computer over the summer called Selene. It has 555,000 computing cores, 1.1 million gigabytes of RAM, and approximately 3 terabits of networking per node. That is now the 5th largest supercomputer in the world and the most power efficient supercomputer in the world. So computers like that don't fit in a box. Sometimes they don't fit in a building. So there's a lot of components connected with a lot of fast networks with different types of computation and different types of storage of data. So my piece is figuring out what we call architecting, how to make that communication infrastructure, both the hardware and the software, fast, efficient, and secure.
Okay, cool. Now that everyone has introduced themselves, I will proceed to the next question.
I was going to say one thing is that I didn't really mention first, so I should probably tie that in a little bit. I didn't have first in the East Coast. I knew nothing about robotics. So my introduction is when my son Kyle, he got bit by the bug 3 years ago. And I don't even know the interesting, because I got to talk to him now tonight. I think he just saw the robotics team out in the lobby of Prospect or something and he saw and then Jack lives near next down the street. But anyway, once he got bit, the first year he was there all the time, and I was just like, where is this? What are you doing? Where are you? And I didn't see him a lot. And then I decided to help out the second year, and then I was all in. And then the third year now, which is unfortunately a year that kind of couldn't do as much, but last year was incredible. Yeah, so he was just all in. I mean, he would be there all the time thinking about robotics, and so he's super passionate about it. And so I started meeting people like you, Fred, who are passionate about it. And FIRST is an amazing organization. So I've met a lot of great people, and I've learned a lot about robotics through it. I wish I had something like that. I don't know if I'd have been, I don't know, back in high school, but I don't even think we had one. I don't remember it back then. Yeah. So, yep.
That's really cool. So I'll move on to the next question now. And what do you guys do on your careers from a day-to-day basis? We can start with Travis and go like in the order we had for the introductions.
Sure. A lot of meetings, but really, it's about helping leading teams through solving problems. It's not that dissimilar to what you do with what a team captain would do on an FRC team. It's just like, I guess the teams may be about the same size, but it's also has a lot more complexity of what we're doing in our problem, and the types of things that we are doing. So really it's about helping, working with other leaders on the team to make sure we have a clear vision of what we're going to and trying to accomplish as a team, and then working with the individuals to align them to that vision and help get us to the end point where we have a solution. So that generally takes a lot of meetings and talking to people and working through things that way.
So I keep looking at your guys' names, and I'm thinking you're missing a few letters off your end of your name. The Schuh.
Yeah, that's pretty close.
Yeah, we're pretty close. Like, throw out the H and add some more letters.
Maybe a shared heritage of making shoes.
Something. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Not my current job.
Okay, that's nice. And wait, who is next? I think that was Austin, right?
Sounds right. I have a few less meetings than Travis, so it depends on the day. So I'm split between trying to solve hairy technical issues. So generally when something's seriously broken, people reach out and they ask for help. And so I end up getting roped into that. A chunk of my days end up being trying to identify kind of more forward-looking issues. Like, I think we have a gap in diagnostics or something in our system, and we're going to fail in a couple of months when we try and put things out with customers. And it's not going to go pretty, and we need to start putting work there. And then just a fair amount of work leading. It's a lot of work to get a group going in a direction together and have a cohesive kind of technical solution that all fits together and doesn't just kind of scatter. And that takes a lot of conscious effort.
Okay, and Kurt, I think.
Yep. Yeah. So so definitely. So I'm doing a lot of meetings. My meetings, pulling people together. I do a lot of teaching. Like this week, I've done 5 workshops, 1 more tomorrow. We rolled out a new system, so I'm teaching people how to use the new system. And then it's a combination of, I lead some teams in India, so I have calls with that team and helping people. A lot of it is being more efficient. I do a lot of workflows, so you'll see me in meetings. I bring up Visio a lot. I don't know, Carmen, if you're familiar with that software. It's just to show you it's a visual way of showing you the sequence of operations. And so we'll do a lot of Visio, a lot of looking at our systems to figure out how it should work. Debugging, I do a lot of things. Like this, did a system rollout. So last 2 weeks, deal with a lot of mini crises like, oh, we didn't test that. Oh, so, and then figuring out, oh, what do we do now? I just locked up all these parts in my variance area, so yeah, so a lot of different interesting crises either that I make or others make that are trying to recover. But yeah, meetings, leading teams, organizing things, answering questions, and teaching is a lot of my weeks and days.
I probably should add in there some of the the best, some of the most fun days are when it gets to go in the lab and actually be part of trying something out. So we're building physical things that surgeons are using, we'll use for doing surgery. So we'll bring surgeons in and we'll do simulated surgery, and we have hypotheses of what we think will happen as engineers and how things will work, and got to bring in the users and test it on what you're actually doing to figure out if you're right. So that's that part of the process.
Are you the patient sometimes? You say they can do surgery?
No, I'm not the patient. No.
Okay.
No,
your brother or Austin is, yeah.
No, we won't go into those details.
Okay.
But what's the what side of the medical? Like what type of devices is your company?
Yeah, so let's see, we're working on a surgical robotic platform for doing, like a broad range of laparoscopic surgery. So
Okay.
it's like basically, it's similar to what Intuitive did, like Intuitive does, but we're going at it from a different angle.
Okay.
So stick sticks in the body, and then you can move tissue around and cut things and move things around and sew them back together.
All right.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like when you're building something, the most fun part is actually testing it. Like honestly, people actually have to spend more time checking and going over to see if there's like any errors or anything. But yeah, that was like for me my computer science class last year too. But obviously that's not anything close to actual job. And Kurt, would you like to share what you do on a day-to-day basis? Oh, sorry, Fred.
Oh yeah, I think it's up to Fred to bring us home.
Yeah,
I think it'd be more fun to have Kurt go again. So my day-to-day is a lot like what Travis described. It's a lot of meetings, and it's a lot of working through the various issues, getting everyone to agree on what the problem is, and then being able to apply the creativity of a lot of smart people to that problem to come up with new solutions and new experiments to run and new things to try that then you can go get in the lab, as Travis was talking about, and show that something works. And realistically, that's a lot of most engineers' days, is a combination of creativity, problem solving, and communication. And the communication part ends up being really important. And the higher percentage of your job is leadership role, the more important the communication is. But everybody that does a thing, if you can't accurately communicate what that thing is, why you're doing it, and what its progress is, it's really hard to work well together. So it's really that combination of problem solving and communication. And I remember the other parts of my career where the day job has been going and sitting down with a customer and trying to solve a problem. I was fortunate in my career to have an opportunity to sit down with, okay, Facebook wants to go from being a medium company to being a big company to being are you kidding me company, and working with them on how does their data center look, and how do they manage airflow, and how do they manage the thermals in the hot aisle, cold aisle containment. How do we do that for other huge companies that are starting to get even bigger? And that is also about problem solving and communication. It's a little different communication when you're talking to a customer than when you're talking to a colleague or a boss. But one of my favorite tools in all of that is good old whiteboard. I can remember in the early part of my career, I had the opportunity to work on designing a new network protocol from scratch. And as a relatively new student out of school with a master's degree, getting an opportunity to do a brand new networking protocol was phenomenal. And so we were working on this little thing called Remote Direct Memory Access, or RDMA. And we got to stand around a whiteboard and make it up. And that was the most fun I had ever had as an adult, was sitting around this whiteboard with 6 other people and trying to figure out how to do data transfer from one computer's memory to another computer's memory without ever hitting an operating system on either side. That was just cool. And we did it standing around a whiteboard in a hallway. And I would stand there in the hallway with my juggling clubs, and I'd sit there and juggle and talk to people. And we'd have conversations about it and arguments. And then we'd go back to our desks and we'd write documents, and we'd go back to our desks and we'd write code and test it out. And that combination of working with people and working with ideas. And I don't remember whether it was Austin or Travis that said it. I think it was Travis. Getting smart people, interesting problems, and getting those people to come together and communicate to apply their creativity to an interesting problem. That's what it's all about. And that's what the day job can be. And in my experience, that's when it's best.
I think a fun thing to point out that's a follow on to what Fred was saying is if you look at kind of career structures as you go from your entry-level engineer, fresh out of college, up to being much more senior, really the scope is really determined kind of around how far you communicate and what the impact of that is. So communication is really important as you start to get further and further.
Yep, that's the biggest thing I see at work. Biggest thing, communication. If you don't communicate, engineers, some do very good, some do very bad, and a lot of it now is written, and so emails and slide decks. So it's really important. And then when you're working with international, now you got the English as a second language, and that's what you'll spend a lot of your day clarifying, communicating, realizing that you didn't communicate well, and now you know why they didn't do it right, because if you read it again, you're like, oh yeah, that wasn't very clear. Yeah. Yep. Like I just had one with the program I just released. I was sitting down with two business system analysts, and we missed something. And I'm like, in my mind, it was so clear, but they had made some assumptions and the communication was there and something was missed. Happens all day. Yep.
I'll add to the communication. Yeah, communication is important, but I also think that in order to have influence, you need not just be able to communicate ideas, but you also need to have ideas of what to do. So I think it's really it's about how do you take an abstract problem and how do you break it down into what you and a team need to do in order to solve that. And that's about that's that influence part. So to be able to have influence over within a larger sphere. You need to both be able to come up with what to do and then be able to communicate that out.
Yep.
Very true.
All right, next question. Looking back now, is there anything you guys wish you had known before entering your career?
Travis.
Oh no. Yeah.
It's starting with me. I mean, I feel like I've been able to learn pretty much everything along the way. So that's been, and I can't really complain about what I've gone down. Yeah, I mean, I've gotten I guess, an education in different types of organizations by nature of them growing. But maybe, I feel like there are different, different environments based on different companies that, what size and what field and stuff. And I think that maybe different people's personalities fit to different ones. So I don't know, that maybe would have been helpful, but I don't think it would have changed anything. Basically, I'm learning that with bigger companies, they have these downsides that you have to mitigate, at least in my perspective.
Yep. Oh, you're on mute, Carmen.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So Austin is next, I think.
Yeah, I guess going into my career, I thought it was more important to be a little bit more technically good on certain things, and I've quickly learned that it's much more about the communication we were talking about and that type of leadership. And so I guess it's something I've picked up as I've been going along, so it hasn't really slowed me down. But it was very interesting to see how my perceptions as a high schooler and before were very different than reality when I got out.
I guess I'm up, right? So I don't know if there's something. I guess when I think back, I had no idea. I mean, I had absolutely zero idea. I read a bunch of books, all these business, and I'm like, and so I had no clue. The thing that has been the same for 22 years at Lamb is leadership. When I learned that in the military at West Point, people you're trying to get, you have a mission to do, and you got people to do it, and it's influencing, it's getting trust, and all those skills. It's the same anywhere, whether it's school first, work, home, whatever. It's the same exact thing, and it's just learning the organization. I guess maybe is to cut myself more slack. I remember, I'm thinking back now, I remember my first review after being at Lam a year, and I was with this VP, and I'm basically trying to convince him of how good I am, really, I guess. And he said to me, he said, we're about break even about what we've invested in you, what we got out of it. And I was trying to defend myself. And then after about 5 minutes, I realized, you know what? He's right. It took about a year, I think, for me to feel like I'm producing more than I'm taking by asking all these questions and all that. And so I would say, cut yourself slack in knowing that it's going to take a while to learn. And the bigger company, the harder it is. And just know that you're going to learn a ton. And at some point, there'll be that inflection point where you feel like you're contributing more than you're taking, but it may be longer than you think. And that's what I tell the new hires at Lam, like, yeah, about a year, you'll be really productive. Until then, you'll be learning. So yeah, maybe that a lot longer than you think to really get really productive.
Wise advice. Brad, you're next.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that. What Kurt is saying. The thing that I think I wish I had known was it's going to be okay. And the idea, when I was a young engineer, I was really afraid of failing, of not doing the absolute best at everything all the time, of taking anything that was a significant risk. And the thing that I would have been better had I known is it's all right. Failure is okay. You can learn from failure. You can get a lot out of failure. And it's a good thing to be able to get out of your comfort zone and do something new and do something that stretches you and do something that makes you grow. And especially when you're new out of your career and you don't know that stuff and you feel like you have to justify, like Kurt was saying, that you're how well you're doing to your boss, and recognize, no, this is a long game, and I'm trying to build skills, I'm trying to build myself, and I should step out of my box and apply for that other job in that other group that I think would be really cool, but I don't really feel ready for yet. I should go join that startup that I think would be really cool that I don't feel ready for yet, because that's the perfect time to do it when you have your whole life and your whole career ahead. I thought, oh no, I got to stay on this straight and narrow path. I've got to do just this step and then this step and then this step, and that's going to lead me where I want to go. And when I got where I am, I look at this meandering path that I took to get here, and I realize it doesn't really matter. Take the risks, fail, accept that. My new manager has a poster on his wall and about how important it is to not get tied into that. And one of the things on that poster is laugh at perfection. Just do something, get it going, get moving, and don't worry about making it perfect. Worry about getting something done. And that is a lesson that took me a long time to learn.
Yeah, I was gonna say that. I think that Travis, you mentioned something too about like how it just kind of worked itself out. It's really like people who try to plan their whole like 10-year career, 5-year career. That's a joke. You just kind of see what comes at you, and you make choices based on the opportunities that come up, and you do your best. But people are like, oh yeah, in 3 years I'll be here, 5 years. You have no idea. So yeah, getting all wrapped up about your whole career planning and all that. You just do a good job. You're open to what opportunities you have and take advantage of it. Like you're saying, Fred, I think that's how it works out. Like I had no idea. If you asked me where I'd be in 20 years, 20 years ago, I mean, how are you gonna know that? Yeah, unless you're really specialized, maybe, Yeah.
I call that vector-based career planning.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But I do get pushback from one of my friends on this one, and that he's like, how you're not going to get to some of these places unless you think about whether you want to be there or not. So yeah. I think that by and large, vector-based career planning is a good approach, and that's really focus on, are you having growth? Are you able to, are you in what you're doing, are you learning new things? Are you able to apply yourself in new ways? And that's the primary thing. But you also need to think about, like, are there places that you really would like to be, that you'd like to get to in your career, and kind of look at where you need to point the vector in order to end up there. But don't stress about it too much.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's good
advice. That is an excellent point, Travis, that you do have, if you have a particular goal in mind, you have a thing that you want to achieve or accomplish. I'm going to cure cancer, or I'm going to get a Nobel Prize by the time I'm 35. If you have those kinds of goals, you can plan and put together an idea of how you're going to get there, and important steps and milestones along the way. And being that intentional about your career is a wonderful thing. But most people don't have that crisp and understanding of what it is that they're going to accomplish, or what they're going to have for breakfast tomorrow, or how they're going to get through the next week. And so for those folks, myself included, most days, it's okay. And as long as you keep in mind some key things about emphasizing your own personal growth, don't just do what your boss asks you. Figure out how what your boss asks you can benefit you and your career, and how you can get something out of it. And if you realize after a few months that what your boss is asking you to do is not getting you what you need to grow, go have a conversation with your boss, or go look around at other opportunities in your company, or go look around at other opportunities outside your company to make sure that that growth of your own is part of it. And along the way, you will get an improved idea of what it is that makes you tick, and what it is that gets you really excited and jazzed about what you're working on. And then you can have that idea of, oh, hey, I would like to cure cancer, or I would like to be, the head of engineering at my own company in 5 or 10 years. And then you can have that plan of how to get there. But you don't have to wait for it. It's not something that someone's going to walk up to you and say, here, this is how you get there. And I don't want to take too much time on this, but I had one of my engineers, when I was relatively new to management, came to me and said, okay, I want to work on my career plan. I want to be an HP fellow. How are you going to make that happen for me? And I said, well, that's not actually how that works. You don't just put down a plan that says I want to be an HP fellow. To be an HP fellow, you have to influence the industry. You have to be someone that's done something really amazing. He says, okay, great. What's that going to be? It's like, well, no, what you need to do is come at it the other way. You need to come at it and say, what do I want to do that I'm really excited about, that makes me so energized that I'm willing to do it really well and really hard? And then try that and do it. And as you get better at it, then you will see how you are making an impact and how well you're able to communicate what that impact is. And that will let you build to a point where you can have the level of influence where you have become an HP fellow. It's not something you can say, that's my goal. It's not a goal. It is a destination, but the goal has to be self-improvement and contributing and communicating and being part of that process of intentionally growing your own career.
Thank you guys for answering, and I will introduce your second host for tonight, but I will be back. Come on now, Ada. She will ask the next few questions. Okay, hi guys. Carmen has to step away shortly, so I'll be moderating for a short time.
Ada.
And then, okay, I guess.
How do we know it's not Carmen again? They're doing a trick on us.
Well, yeah.
It's the sweatshirt. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess I'll ask, are there any particularly important skills to have for your career? And I believe Travis is first.
I mean, yeah, I think that for at least in the way my career is shaped out, which is spending a lot of time spending time with high levels of ambiguity. I think that the core skills have been, learning how to solve problems and learning how to learn, and knowing how to learn. So like with those two, like you kind of get through everything. But it's kind of like, right now we're, kind of things go in phases, and we're in we're in a very high level of ambiguity right now and uncertainty at work. And it's really about sitting there and like, okay, so what are we going to do? What are the things that we try first that move us forward and help us, learn something? We don't really know how we're going to get to the end yet. We barely even know what the end is, but we got to figure out something that will help move us forward closer to it. We'll learn something through that effort, and then we'll go do that effort. We'll get there, and then we'll move forward from it. So that's kind of like, that's that core, problem solving skill and ability to sort of to self-direct or direct teams to that. That's like, I think that's been a core skill. And it's, it's something that you start to develop even, at FRC. That's, you kind of, when you show up as a freshman, you're probably doing a lot of, asking around what to do, or having people tap you and tell you what to do. But as you go through it, you kind of becomes more and more complicated, and they'll be like, you'll end up with like, hey, this thing is broken, it needs to be fixed. And it's on you to figure out, well, what's broken. When we mean it's broken, like, why is it that it's not breaking? What are our options? How are those options going to impact what happens with the robot in the future matches, and which is the best option that we can do to fix this thing before the next match and we're ready to get out. So that's the microcosm of the beginning of sort of the things that I do, get the skills that I use, or that are helpful to me day in, day out.
Yes, thank you for your response. I think that's really true. FRC is definitely helping us build the skills we need for the workforce as well. I think Austin is next.
Yeah, I'll echo a lot of what Travis said. The other part of that, learning a lot. I don't know all the answers to all the problems coming in. I have to figure them out. But it's also a really big team effort. Like, I don't have to know all the answers or even figure them all out. But one of the skills that I have developed is how to listen to a bunch of folks and figure out which answers are probably the right ones and which ones are just crazy and we probably shouldn't go that way, and help promote the good ideas and not beat down. You never want to, when you're brainstorming, you never want to like to kill an idea, but help make sure that the right ideas are the ones that get promoted, and so we can succeed as a group.
Okay, thank you. And I believe Kurt is next.
Yeah, so I guess I'll touch on just, you mentioned ambiguity. It's interesting. We have this term VUCA that my boss and I use. You mentioned two of them. It's volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. And you mentioned two of them. Interesting. Have you ever heard the term, Travis, VUCA? Oh,
but that sounds like what we got going on.
Yeah. So we joke, my boss and all the time, there's a string. So we use this term again: volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. My job is to purge all those, reduce them or eliminate them. You'll never eliminate it. And so it really is, and this other military term called the fog of war. And it's just taking crazy, disorganized chaos, for at least when you're in operations, and trying to systematize it, make it orderly. And so you need to have a skill that can take this kind of disorganized chaos and bring some order to it, but not too much order, because then it becomes bureaucratic. And so that's a skill that I think is really important in my career. But yeah. So my boss, actually, he was in a deli or something we were talking about, and he found a drink called VUKA, not CA. So he bought me a case of it during a COVID as like a gift, and I have a couple more drinks. And so during this one last week, while I was working crazy hours and I was drinking it, caffeine and all that. But yeah, so it's a fun term. Me and my boss are always trying to bring order to chaos and eliminate VUCA. Yep.
Beautiful.
Brad?
So I'll say what, and I'll say a word about why. The skills that I think are important are keep an open mind, open ears, and the ability to take joy in what you do. And another skill that I think is important is be nice to people, even if they're not being helpful to you in the moment. And to say a little more about that, what I do as a day job requires quite a breadth of technical knowledge across networking, storage, platform, data center design, customer engagement, lots of different things. But you don't just, you need to be able to get that knowledge, because that knowledge is going to be different for every individual. So the skill you really need is the skill to pick up other skills. And the best way to do that is to listen and to learn, like Austin and Travis has talked about already, and to be able to do that in an environment where you and your colleagues share respect is the best way for you and your colleagues to share ideas and to support each other and grow. And if you can do that while having fun, be safe, have fun, do cool stuff. If you can do that while having fun, then everybody's energized, everybody's motivated, your team is humming and buzzing and stuff is happening and it's exciting, and you accomplish so much and you grow so much just from that element of being able to enjoy and take joy from what you do.
All right. Thank you so much for your response. And I think the next question is there anything you have learned being in the workplace that can be applied to robotics teams?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I learned as much
Yeah,
things
that's
that
right.
from robotics that can be applied to work as I do that from work that can be applied to robots. I mean, I think the two go back and forth.
That's the next question, so you're good.
Yeah. So I'm not thinking of. Well, I think just the general skills. I mean, they apply over. I don't have any particular specifics. I think it's been more instances where there are certain things that would be too crazy to try at work, so we try them at robots instead. And I think that my story as a career, I've gone the leadership route, and that was largely influenced by my role as a leader in FRC and my role as a mentor, a leader as a student, as a mentor afterwards, because they don't just hand you large teams at work. They kind of want to know that you're the right person for it. But at robots, it's pretty easy to end up in charge of a large team, and you have to figure a lot of things out. So that's been a really fruitful learning exercise that I've certainly taken and applied in the work that I do.
Absolutely. Austin, what about you?
Yeah, similar to Travis. I kind of enjoy trying to find the similarity between work and robots. We have a lot of the same processes in both places. We just implement them in different ways. At work, the problems tend to be a little larger, so you need a little bit more of an official process to track things, and the team can be a little larger. Whereas with robotics, you have the same problems, like you need to track issues and with the robot and track schedule and all that. But we don't have enough time or enough problem complexity to really justify a large solution. So I kind of enjoy finding the solutions that apply to both and trying to figure out what the right size solution is for the two places. And then you can look at how we solved it at a larger organization and see what are the properties that were really nice there and what works well at a robotics team. Like, oh, maybe it's really nice to have it written down. Okay, we're going to put it in a spreadsheet. Great, done. Or you kind of look at the robotics team and you say, okay, well, we didn't actually track this as well as we could have, like in a big organization, but that's fine because the team's smaller and we're just going to be simple enough that that's not an issue. But we're acknowledging the difference between the two and kind of dealing with it. So I really enjoy that part. It's kind of fun to compare the two.
All right, I'm up. Yeah, I'm trying to think of anything particular. It's funny that where I go with is I'll go with robotics. What I think is it's gracious professionalism, that tagline, and it kind of piggies back on Fred, what you're saying is that is amazingly powerful to see in robotics the culture and that kind of a culture, and you bring it to work and you say that gracious professionalism, and I think that's a great thing that is amazingly powerful and everywhere you go. And so I've been trying to use what I've learned in robotics that way into work and do it the same way. But work stuff, yeah, I mean, all the general stuff applies. And it's interesting about Austin, about comparing and contrasting. That is true. Like, if you're small enough, it's like, hey, you go do this and you can remember all the things that got to get done. But when you got a big project, you can't just remember, you'll forget everything. So task lists and all that become really powerful. But yeah, I guess that's about it for that one.
I always joke at robotics that if the problem is big enough that you can't remember all the pieces, then you need to simplify.
Yeah.
Like you can't get it done in 6 weeks if you can't remember it all.
Yeah.
Very, very true. So I guess it's my go. So there's a number of things that I think that are applicable from real world work to FIRST Robotics, in part because FIRST Robotics is so complex and so much like the real world that there's a lot of crossover in both directions. And some things that I think are particularly useful for robotics teams to understand are process actually works. It's counterintuitive, but it's true. So actually having a plan and a process and having things written down and remembering what you did last year and having tables and Kanban boards and the tools of software engineering, project management, process management, having these tools at your disposal and having mentors come in to teach you about them, it's really, really useful and helpful for getting all the stuff done in 6 weeks. And it's something that's going to stick with you for the rest of your career. And it's going to make it easier for you to get that first job and to do a great job in that first job, because you're going to be organized. You're going to know how to get stuff done. Another thing that's really important, I think, about that I bring from the working world and try to bring everywhere is, remember, engineering is done by people. Everybody has good days. Everybody has bad days. Everybody has areas of strength and weakness. Don't expect the people around you to be perfect. Don't expect yourself to be perfect. It's a process. Everybody is going to go through it. And if you trust people to get their job done, but verify that they did, if you're willing to help when somebody else is struggling, as a team, you can get through almost anything. And just remember that in your deadline is so important. You've got to get this done, and that person isn't getting it. You just take a moment, take a breath. Everybody around you is a person. Everybody around you is doing what they can do today. Stick with it, work as a team, and you'll get it done. And the other thing, I've harped on this earlier, so I won't belabor it, but fun is a great motivator. Keep things fun everywhere.
I did think of something that I've learned. I think that I've come to appreciate. I've learned from work that that human resources or HR it is a full-time job for a reason, and that's like, and I think that we kind of gloss over that part with robotics. We try to run this organization with all volunteers and like not much organizational structure, and sometimes that comes to bite us. So I really have I think that that paying attention to the people side and building the support structure for them, it's hard, and so when that stuff like feels like it's taking up a lot of time at robots, or you have a lot of problems to work through as a team, just realize that at work that's someone's full-time job. It's just to take care of that for the team and help you guys function as a team.
And another thing I think is worth mentioning is mistakes. Mistakes happen, and the best thing that you can do when you make a mistake is do your best to correct it and move on. And the best that you can do when somebody else makes a mistake is remember your own. And sometimes the person that connects 15 volts to the 5-volt circuit is you, and you just gotta deal with it and go on to the next thing, and it's okay. These things happen. You just gotta deal with it and move on.
Thank you so much for these responses. I really agree. There's a lot of like skills that can be cross transferred between different fields, especially between robotics and all those engineering fields you guys are a part of. So I think one question we haven't covered yet is, what is like the biggest challenge you guys have faced?
Sorry, Carmen, you put out there a little bit. Can you repeat the question, please?
She froze. It's like the edge of your seat. What is the something challenge?
Could you repeat the question? I think you dropped out at the last bit of it.
Yeah, my screen froze for a second there. Sorry,
Yeah.
technical.
No worries.
So the question was, what was the biggest challenge you guys have faced in your careers?
I mean, I guess I'm supposed to start. I mean, there've been a couple of times where like been given a problem that people are like, well, I hope you solve this one. And I mean, that's been a pretty big challenge. And I think that we've had various success rates as a team on that one. And been was fortunate to be at the start of a couple programs, and you just kind of once you being able to it's been very, very rewarding to it's really uncomfortable up front to sit there with that problem statement put in front of you of like we're counting on you to get through this one. There's a great opportunity when you solve it. But it's really rewarding to have gotten through that and look back at it. And I think another big challenge that I've faced is just growing a team and doing it quickly. So we kind of focus a lot on the like making robots part in the technology piece, but when you make big complicated systems, it becomes hard to, like, you need a lot of people to make it all work. And so we've gone from the team size has grown like 2 or 3 orders of magnitude at work. On a couple programs, a couple of times, and just hiring people, figuring out how to integrate them into the team, and figuring out how to like go through acquisitions. Those are hard things.
There have been a couple times where I've had to try and push something over the finish line. I end up being on whatever's broken, is what I've best characterized a lot of my career. Like wherever there's a fire, I end up getting pointed, and so I get to help figure out what the fire is, identify it, fix it. Some of the times it's something small enough I can just do it. Other times I need to take a group of 5 or 10 people and kind of get them all pointed in the right direction, agree on the problem, and get it fixed. And that's hard because you got to get people to all move together. And generally, if it's a fire, you don't have much time, so everyone wants it done yesterday. Some of the fires have been things that are like blocking getting the product out to customers. We couldn't start testing or stuff like that. So like everyone's waiting, just trying to figure out how to get that to move. Very tricky.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I think back early in the career, but it's not as challenging as you look back on it. But I think it's more relevant to students that are going to, like, I remember the first time I had to go visit a customer. Like, that was the scariest thing ever in my life and challenging. So, there was a problem. They flew me over to Japan. I'd never been to Japan. You're in front of a Japanese customer. You're trying to apologize. And none of it makes any sense to me, because logically, I'm like, why are they flying me all over here to apologize on behalf of the company? And then getting pulled in by a fab manager into his office, some French guy just yelling at me, because I had a lab badge and I had no idea what was going on. But those are like, I think, challenging the beginning of your career, like just doing new things, flying to different countries. And but now, I guess 22 years into it, that's not as scary to me anymore. Challenging is our company's getting kind of like you're saying, Trey, our company is multi-billion-dollar company now. And so it's huge. And the complexity of things are just massive. And I joke in meetings, I say my brain hurts. I have to stop because my brain just just hurts from thinking so much about how to unravel this problem. And so, yeah, just when you get bigger, it's just more complex and your head hurts, and there are a lot of trade-offs. When you're smaller, it's pretty simple, but there's just trade-offs, and then the communication across, it's challenging to communicate across hundreds, thousands of people. How do you get a message across? How do you get them to read something? How do you train them? So it's just order of magnitude complexity. So that's what I guess currently is very challenging to me. Yep.
I guess I'll talk about two things. One is what I think is most challenging in my career, and one is what it was, like Kurt was saying, what was most challenging to start my career, because I think that's really relevant to this audience. I would say that throughout my career, the greatest challenges have been non-technical. And I think that's for two reasons. One is I'm an engineer. I love technical challenges. Technical challenges are great. And non-technical challenges are, an example of that is being told by a manager to do a thing that violates an industry specification and that you have to get it done. There are things that you will be asked to do in your career that make no sense to you whatsoever. And sometimes that's because the person asking you doesn't understand the problem. And sometimes it's because you don't understand the constraints. And sometimes it's both. And that quandary and that rich set of complex non-technical problems is in large part why communication is so critically important to an engineer's job. Because you really need to be able to explain to your manager, provided, of course, that the culture of the environment allows you to do that. And I've worked for companies where that's the culture, and I've worked for companies where that's not the culture. You need to be able to articulate to the people that need to know what the technical strengths and weaknesses of an idea are. And they need to be able to communicate to you so that you can apply your engineering creativity to the problem, what the actual customer constraints and needs are, and what the financial constraints are, and what the business constraints are, so that as an engineer, you can balance all of that. And it's not easy to do, but that is a large part of the engineer's job. Early in my career, my biggest career challenge was figuring out who I was and what I wanted to do. And it was really difficult for me. I went through high school and I loved math and I loved physics. Physics was awesome. It was by far my favorite thing. And my brother had gone into engineering physics at the University of Illinois, and I went into engineering physics at the University of Illinois. I got into the classes and I went, wait a minute, you mean I have to get a PhD and do a postdoc to do the cool stuff? Oh, geez, I'm not that patient. I can't do that. And then I took my first programming class. It was a class in Fortran. And I learned Watt 5. Waterloo Fortran was called Watt 4, and the next one was called Watt 5. And I learned that I could do all this cool stuff in software, and I would find out if my answer was right like that. Just instantly, I would know that my problem was right or wrong. I got immediate feedback. It was glorious. I just loved it. And I went down to the university office and I switched my major and never looked back. And finding that was a gift. It was hard. A lot of people don't find it. A lot of people take some 2 or 3 tries to find it. And that's okay. you don't have to know as a high school student or as a college student or as a recent college grad what you're going to do for the rest of your career. Right? I started doing computer science, went and got a master's degree, wrote operating systems code. I thought, this is really fantastic. Wrote networking code, did that for a dozen years, managed teams, managed technologies, and then went, I got an opportunity to build servers. Let's go build servers. I got an opportunity to build data centers. Let's go build data centers. I got an opportunity to build chips. Let's go build chips. And all of these hard right turns in my career built on each other and worked. So that uncertainty that I had coming out of high school, do I want to study physics? Is this the right fit for me? Is it okay for me to jump into computer science? All these years later, really didn't matter. What mattered was keeping an open mind, keeping open ears, finding something I could take joy in, and being nice to people, even if they're not being helpful at this moment.
Thank you so much for that amazing response. Okay, we'll circle back to one more question before we move on to questions from the audience today. And so I'm just going to ask, what do you guys enjoy the most about your career, and is there anything you don't like about your career? And we're starting with Travis.
I think we might answer that one.
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we're just on audience questions. That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Oh wait, did you guys answer this question?
Yeah, that's okay. Let's get to the audience questions.
I think your sister asked that.
Okay, oops. Okay, then that was a communication issue.
See, and it goes back to what we were talking about, communication. Look at that. Full circle. That was good. You did it on purpose just to prove a point. That's good. I like that.
Okay, so many of you mentioned communication. Do you have any tips or guidelines on how to improve your communication when you're working in a team with your coworkers?
I think that the key thing is listening. Is like you can adjust or fix a lot of things if you're good at listening, and just trying to, and it's an active skill, but trying to figure out as you're talking to people, or as they're talking to you, what are they saying? How are they reacting to what it is that you're saying? Are there verbal or nonverbal cues from them responding to what you're communicating? And then as you kind of go forward, you'll get practice and you'll figure out what works and what doesn't work, and you'll be able to build and improve from there.
Yeah. I'll just follow up on that if I may. I'm kind of jumping the queue, but I think Travis is absolutely right. Active listening is a really critical skill, and as a practical matter, something that's very helpful is quite often you can get in a room with somebody and have a discussion and think you both are in solid agreement on what you've just talked about. You can both believe you're in solid agreement on what you just talked about. And you walk out of the room and you start doing stuff and find out later that you were using the same words, but you weren't using the same meanings of those words. And you end up not doing at all what you thought you were doing. So something that's very helpful as a practical tool is when you're having a discussion with someone, echo back to them. Say, oh, let me just make sure that I understand. Let me repeat to you what I think you just said, and say back to them what you understand about what they just communicated to you. And by that process, then they'll hear what you heard, and you'll be able to iteratively get closer to an actual common understanding of what you're talking about. And you have to listen to be able to do that.
I guess I would add that not all mediums are great for all topics.
Yeah. What email is great for everything, isn't it?
Yeah. So I don't always communicate all the things in email or chat or whatever, depending on what's going on. I'll look at the topic. I'll be like, you know what, this one doesn't sound like fun over email. I'm going to go talk to somebody. Normally that would mean stand up and walk over. Right now that means I set up a meeting with them or do a video call or something, just so I get more feedback for how they're responding and if it's going how I'm hoping it's going, and gives me more of a chance to respond and steer.
Yeah, yeah, I think different mediums, of course, that's a great point. And then I think, yeah, I think if written ones, I mean, I think it's good to have early in my career. I know he used to review my emails before I sent them. And actually was pretty good. I mean, he was a horrible boss, but he was a great communicator. I learned a lot from him. So I think, you know, from an email point of view, like simple things, don't use red 16 font. I had a guy that worked for me once and he would get all caps red font. Don't do that in the email. And probably if you're angry, don't send the email. You know, those kind of things are very helpful and practical. And then, yeah, when you're talking to someone in person, I think what you said, Fred, is I do it all the time. Like, let me make sure that's what I think I heard you say. And then you repeat it back. And so it's very powerful. Those kind of tools like that. Yep.
I'll add one more thing on the technical side of the communication. I find that people don't write things down or put them into a PowerPoint early enough. We end up talking about ideas through circles, and you know, I'm in the mechanical world. A lot of things are physical. You know, the earlier that you can get pictures to it, to be able to describe what you're doing. Yeah. And I also, you know, I think people like presentations or design reviews or, you know, even informal design reviews. Do I really want to spend the time on that? Is that value add? And I find just that the process of going through that, of putting together the story that you're telling to someone, really helps you clarify what you're thinking about. So, you know, communication can help you think about what you're doing better, in addition to helping others. And then the last thing, you know, PowerPoint's sort of a you know, ubiquitous medium for capturing things and sharing things around. And the other thing is that if you put together a good set of slides, those can really have legs, and ideas can actually go, and they can have a much broader reach than if you have to, you know, say or communicate everything. So kind of it helps, you know, you know, a good slide or a set of slides will have a lot of legs within an organization and help and reach a lot of people in a positive way.
Right, and I'll just follow up on that, and also on something that Kurt said. You reminded me with your comment about you having a boss that was a really good communicator. One of my best managers in my career, she was a section manager over a bunch of us that were managing a group of, in total, about 60, 70 engineers. And our staff meetings, when we had to give a presentation to her boss, part of our product lifecycle is you would go through these various checkpoints, and you had to create a slide deck based on a template and give all this information about your product. Is it going to be profitable? What's the return on investment? Who are the customers? What are the technical issues? All of that stuff. And there were these things that you had to do. And one of the things that she did for us was she would take her staff meetings, and whoever was up next to give a product lifecycle PLC presentation, they got the meeting, and everybody else in the room got to throw tomatoes and just pick their presentation apart, because we were a friendly audience. We were there to help them improve. And I learned more about slidecraft in a year of working for Jackie Balfour than I have in the rest of my career, because we would get in that room and we would just tear each other up. And it was really, really useful. We'd spend, it's like 45 minutes into the meeting and we're on slide 3. And what came out of that was a good appreciation for how to make a message crisp and tight. And just like Austin was saying, how to tell the story. Is your presentation connected? Is it going somewhere? Can a person follow your logic from one slide to the next? Do they feel like they've got the complete picture when they get out the other side, as opposed to just being blasted with facts? And so the thing about that is, get your team, right? You got a team now. You're on a robotics team. Get your team to support you. Get your team to give you feedback. Get your team to be honest with you about what's great and what's not great, and use that to make your product better, your presentation better, your communication better, you better.
Yep, concision, active listening, and speaking, those are all super, super important for communication. We have another audience question, and this one's a fun one. It's, what was the FRC experience back in the day? So it sounds like all of you were involved with the robotics.
So I think you broke up on us. What was that?
Back in the day, what was back in the day
Oh,
FRC?
what was it back in the
Back
day?
when I used to be an FRC.
What was
A lot of stuff wasn't available that you can buy today. So like we are so spoiled today. You can just go to VexPro's website and buy any gear size. It is amazing. You used to have to like dig through all the gear catalogs and try and find exactly the different gears you want, and one manufacturer wouldn't have them all, or stock track products would run out in the middle of the season when you would finish designing something requiring that gear, and you'd have to figure out how to hex broach it, and just all these things that you can just buy now, and it's really nice. So it lets you kind of move that creative process a little bit more from the manufacturing side to more of the design. But I find that more rewarding almost, because that's really a lot of what industry's moved towards as well. You're not building things the first time anymore. You're reassembling different pieces in new and novel ways, but you don't start by writing a language. You go grab one that somebody else has been using, is already finished.
Yeah, we didn't have as much resources as a high school, as when we were students on our team. We would have benefited greatly from being able to go to VexPro and assemble robots with, band saws and drill presses and, those kind of tools. It would have been a much different experience. And then just the level of technical competence within FIRST, because of all the, your competitive advantage in FIRST used to come from the fact that you could make things. And if you could figure out how to manufacture things, you could make you could make the most competitive robot, and that's now changed, where now you need to be able to think about what's the right thing to make, and be strategic with your time, because that's the only advantage you have, is how well you use your time, not necessarily what you can go out and buy and put together.
And I think
I wasn't an FRC, so I'm just gonna listen to these guys.
I've only been doing this for 10 years, but I've been watching Austin and Travis do it longer. And I just wanted to say something about that transition, because I remember the Scout bricks that we used to use in FLL, and then the NXTs, and then all the generations. Every couple of years they come out with shiny new hardware, and oh look, the motor encoders are included in the motors now. You don't have to have a separate piece of hardware for that. How cool is that? And all of these various innovations that are brought to the program. And for a while, I was concerned about that, because the new generation of students weren't learning the same things that the old generation of students were. But what got me past that was realizing that the new generation of students are still learning. They're just learning different things, and they're learning things appropriate to that point in time. And a recent example of that for me is the Limelight. We've got a Limelight on our robot for our 2020 season robot, and our 2021 season robot. And previously, we had really struggled as a team, but back to 2016, 2017 season, to get computer vision to work well. And we tried various different things to do that, and it's hard. And the availability of the Limelight, to have that set some team put together and put it in a box with an Arduino and a camera and an output that lets more teams have access to computer vision that's reliable and working, lets you see a lot more creative solutions. You have a finite amount of creativity that you can pour into the robot in 6 weeks. And so having that richer toolbox, every year you get a richer toolbox, that lets you focus on applying your creativity to how to apply those tools to solve the interesting problem in an interesting way, rather than solving a problem that's already been solved by someone else and was probably solved better by Bellarmine. And so instead of just having to eat their dust, now you can be more competitive. And that, I think, is really great, in part because it lets more teams be competitive, and in part because that's what your real job is going to be like when you get out. Because software is all about mashups. Making the tools is all about mashups. Using the ability to have laser cutters and CNCs and all that kind of stuff in your day-to-day work life, and the software equivalents and the process management equivalents. every day people are figuring out how to make their jobs a little bit easier. And keeping pace with that is every bit as important or more important than learning how to do it the old-fashioned way.
Thank you for that. And final audience question is, were there any clubs or activities or internships that you did in college that helped with future career or experience?
I mean, I was in college. I was I was pretty involved with the ASME, or the American Society of Mechanical Engineering's. They had a competition program called the Human Powered Vehicle Challenge. I think it still exists as something out there. And for me, that was like a really great vehicle for learning. Because it was something that like it was like FRC, you know, there are a lot of other programs out there that let you do this, but it was really about having you know, a place that I could go and apply the things that I was learning in the classroom and help motivate what I was doing in a way outside of the exams and the projects in the classes. So and the other part of that was that it was unlike FRC, like, you know, the competition didn't change very much from year to year. The rules were, you know, maybe changed to, you know, 10 or 20% rather than being like new, you know, 50% change in what you're doing. And so for that, you know, it really was nice to be able to go through a problem 4 times in a row and try things differently and really be able to build and learn as a team. And then, you know, with that, the other really valuable thing from myself as a mechanical engineer is that I was in the shop a lot and making parts that I was designing, and that taught me an immense amount and created a really tight feedback loop between, you know, things that I was learning, things I was doing, and then seeing them out in reality and figuring out what worked or didn't work.
I guess I was going to take the question in a different direction, but I don't think I've ever gotten a job or an internship not through a robotics connection. So kind of the network that I built up through robotics was pretty impressive, and it's serving me just fine. I've hired a bunch of interns from robotics teams, followed robotics folks at various companies. My first internship at Google was because a mentor was at Google and was like, oh, hey, send me your resume. You should get an internship here, and just a bunch of connections through that. So met a huge number of people and still interact with them.
Yeah, and since I had different experience, I was in the military, you know, internships after college, so much different experience. So I guess I don't have much to share as far as that question.
I didn't have an internship per se, but I had 2 jobs that I had when I was in college. One was a summer job, and one was one that I did during the school year that I think were both influential on my career. The first one was after completing a couple of classes in C, I got a summer job as a C programmer at a company that my brother worked for. And his boss took me in and said, well, I'm not sure I want to hire you because your brother works here, and that could be seen as nepotism, but we'll see what you can code. And he gave me a coding test, and I did well. And he said, all right, we'll bring you on. And that was very, it was very meaningful to me to get a job in my career while I was still a student at the university. And so the power of that, whether it's an internship or a summer job or whatever it is, being able to say, hey, this is something I learned over the last year and people pay me to do it? How cool is that? Was an amazing experience and really, really valuable. The other job that I had as a college student that I think really did help me in my career is I was a writer for the handicapped. There was a handicapped dorm on campus, and there were people there with spinal injuries and cerebral palsy, and everybody there was in a wheelchair, and most people required some kind of assistance to talk, and everybody needed assistance to eat. and things of that nature. And doing that job gave me a real appreciation for the how much of a person everyone is. Even the people that look weird, you get to know them. You get past the speech impediment, and you get past the person who's 20 years old that weighs 50 pounds, and you get past all of that, and you get a chance to sit down with them after you've done homework with them for a while and just ask them about life. And it's everybody you work with has stories, has life experience, and you can't ignore any of it. It is all valuable, and it's all beautiful. And that experience of having the opportunity, the blessing to get to know that community is something that served me well in my career as well.
Okay, that was all the questions we had for you guys today, and thank you guys so much for coming and sharing your experiences and answers. And thank you to everyone who tuned in to this. I hope you enjoyed it, and we have a mentor panel every month, so come tune in next month. And once again, thank you guys for coming, sharing your experiences with us. And so yeah, that concludes our mentor panel for this month.
All right, thanks.
Thank you very much, Ada. Thank you very much, Carmen.
Yeah.
Thank you very
Nice
much
to meet you guys.
for organizing.
Yeah.
All right.